यो अनलाइन क्लासमा 10औं श्रेणीका विद्यार्थीहरूलाई फेरि एकचोटि हार्दिक स्वागत जनाउँछु। आज हामी नेपाली साहित्यबाट 10औं श्रेणीको पाठ्यक्रम अन्तर्गत राम भरत संवाद नामक कविता पढ्न गइरहेका छौँ र यस कविताका कवि हुन् भानुभक्त आचार्य। र कविता पढ्नभन्दा अघि अथवा कविता बुझाउनभन्दा अघि म आदिकवि भानुभक्त आचार्यको संक्षिप्त परिचय अथवा संक्षिप्त जानकारी विद्यार्थीहरू अगाडि राख्न लागिरहेको छु। आदिकवि भानुभक्त आचार्यलाई हामी आदिकवि भनेर भन्छौँ। आदिकवि भन्नुको अर्थ हो सुरुको कवि अथवा प्रारम्भिक कवि अथवा सुरुका कवि भनेर भानुभक्त आचार्यलाई भन्छौँ। भानुभक्त आचार्य भन्दा अघि पनि धेरै यस्ता कविहरू थिए जसले नेपाली साहित्यमा कलम चलाएको हामी पाउँछौँ, जसमा शुभानन्द दास, शक्तिवल्लभ अर्याल, वसन्त शर्मा, विद्यारण्य केसरी आदि साहित्यकारहरू जसले धेरै रचनाहरू लेखेको हामी पाउँछौँ। तथापि भानुभक्त आचार्यलाई नै आदिकवि किन भनियो त भन्ने प्रश्न धेरैचोटि आउने गर्छ र भानुभक्त आचार्यलाई आदिकवि भन्नुको तात्पर्य अथवा आदिकवि भन्नुको अर्थ हो भानुभक्त आचार्यले नेपालीपन दिने चेष्टा गरे साहित्यमा। यसभन्दा अगाडिका साहित्यकारहरू जो शुभानन्द दास, शक्तिवल्लभ अर्याल, विद्यारण्य केसरी, वसन्त शर्मा आदि थिए, त्यसमा संस्कृत भाषा, अवधी, मैथिली, वज्र आदि भाषाको प्रयोग भएको रचनाहरू हामी पाउँछौँ ती साहित्यकारहरूमा। भनेदेखि भानुभक्त आचार्यमा मौलिकता दिने, नेपालीपन ल्याउने अथवा नेपालीपन दिने मौलिकता ल्याउने चेष्टा गरेको पाउँछौँ। भानुभक्त आचार्यको आध्यात्म रामायणलाई अनुवाद गरेर भानुभक्त आचार्यले जुन रामायण हामीलाई दिए, यो रामायण गाउँ बस्ती लेक बेसीसम्म पुग्यो, तराई कुना कन्दरासम्म पुग्यो, जसले सुसुप्त अवस्थामा रहेका नेपाली मानिसहरूलाई शिक्षाको क्षेत्रमा जागरुक गराउने, शिक्षाको क्षेत्रमा अघि बढाउने, शैक्षिक एउटा क्रान्ति नै ल्याउने काम भानुभक्त आचार्यले गरेको हामी पाउँछौँ। र भानुभक्त आचार्यको जन्म नेपालको तनहुँ रम्बा गाउँमा उनको जन्म भएको थियो। रम्बा गाउँमा जन्मिएका भानुभक्त आचार्यको जन्म 13 जुलाईको दिन भएको थियो। 13 जुलाई 1814 सन् 1814मा उनको जन्म भयो भने 54 वर्षको उमेर पुरा गर्दा नगर्दै भानुभक्त आचार्यको निधन भयो। सन् 1868मा भानुभक्तको निधन भएको हामी पाउँछौँ। र भानुभक्त आचार्यका पिताको नाम धनञ्जय आचार्य अनि आमाको नाम धर्मावती आचार्य थियो। र भानुभक्त आचार्यले रामायण, आध्यात्म रामायणलाई नेपालीमा अनुवाद गरे, जसमा प्रशस्त एउटा मौलिकता दिने काम भानुभक्त आचार्यले गरेको हामी पाउँछौँ। र भानुभक्त आचार्यको कृतिहरूमा, भानुभक्त आचार्यले लेखेका कविताहरूमा हामी विशेष गरेर नीति उपदेशका कुराहरू, यो हाम्रो समाजलाई एउटा आदर्श समाज निर्माण गर्ने, नैतिक शिक्षा दिने र एउटा आदर्श शिक्षा प्रदान गर्ने काम गरेर हाम्रो समाजलाई आध्यात्मिक दिशातर्फ अग्रसर गराउने, मानिसहरूलाई आध्यात्मिक दिशातर्फ अग्रसर गराउने काम भानुभक्त आचार्यले गरेको पाउँछौँ। र भानुभक्त आचार्यलाई साहित्यको इतिहासमा हेर्ने हो भनेदेखि माध्यमिक कालका कविको रूपमा हामी भानुभक्त आचार्यलाई पाउँछौँ। माध्यमिक कालका राम भक्ति धाराका कवि हुन् भानुभक्त आचार्य। माध्यमिक कालमा 3टा धारामा विभाजन गरिएको छ, राम भक्ति धारा, कृष्ण भक्ति धारा र निर्गुण भक्ति धारा। र राम भक्ति धाराका कवि हुन् भानुभक्त आचार्य। र विशेष गरेर रामको स्तुति गरेर, रामको महिमा गाएर, रामको जीवनलाई आदर्श मानेर भानुभक्त आचार्यले रचनाहरू सृजना गरेको हामी पाउँछौँ। र आध्यात्म रामायण पनि भगवान रामप्रति केन्द्रित रहेर अथवा भगवान रामको आदर्शलाई उतार्ने चेष्टा, साहित्यमा उतार्ने चेष्टा भानुभक्त आचार्यले गरेको हामी पाउँछौँ र नीति उपदेशका कुराहरूलाई नैतिक तालाई दर्शाउने चेष्टा र हाम्रो समाजलाई एउटा आदर्श मार्गतर्फ अग्रसर गराउने चेष्टा भानुभक्त आचार्यले गरेको हामी पाउँछौँ। र भानुभक्तका प्रकाशित कृतिहरूमा हामी रामायण अनुवाद, आध्यात्म रामायणलाई अनुवाद गरेको हामी पाउँछौँ। बधु शिक्षा कविता, भक्तमाला कविता, प्रश्नोत्तरी कविता भानुभक्त आचार्यले लेखेका रचनाहरू हुन्, कृतिहरू हुन्। र भानुभक्त आचार्यले नेपाली समाजलाई एकताको सूत्रमा बाँध्ने, सबैलाई एकत्रित गर्ने र शिक्षाको क्षेत्रमा अघि बढाउने काम गरेको हामी पाउँछौँ। र भानुभक्तले लेखेको पहिलो कविता हो घाँसी कविता, जुन कविता एकजना घाँसी व्यक्तिबाट, घाँस काट्दै गरेको एउटा व्यक्ति जसले घाँस काटेर घाँस बेचेर उसले इनार खनाउने, कुवा खनाउने जुन एउटा इच्छा व्यक्त गर्छ, कुवा बनाउने, कुवा खनाएर कुवाको पानी गाउँ समाजका मानिसहरूले आएर पिउन पाउन् भनेर एउटा पुण्यको काम, धर्मको काम गर्ने जुन एउटा इच्छा जाहेर गर्छ घाँसीले, त्यो घाँसीबाट प्रेरणा पाएर उनले कविता लेख्न सुरु गरेको इतिहास पाउँछौँ। र भरजन्म घाँसतिर मनदी धन कमायो, नाम केही रहोस् पछि भनेर कुवा खनायो भनेर भानुभक्त आचार्यले घाँसी शीर्षक कवितामा लेखेका छन्। र हामीले पनि हाम्रो समाजमा कुनै एउटा कृति छोडेर जानुपर्छ, कृति रहने काम चाहिँ गर्नुपर्छ भन्ने कुरा भानुभक्त आचार्यले गरेका छन्। र भानुभक्त आचार्यको कृतिहरूमा एउटा नैतिक उपदेश, ज्ञानका कुराहरू हामी पाउने गर्छौँ। र यो आज हामी पढ्न लागिरहेको जुन पाठ छ राम भरत संवाद, यो राम भरत संवादमा पनि राम र भरतको बीचको संवाद अथवा वार्तालाप, कुराकानीलाई यो कवितामा भानुभक्त आचार्य, आदिकवि भानुभक्त आचार्यले व्यक्त गर्ने चेष्टा गरेका छन्। र अहिले टिभीमा प्रसारण भइरहेको छ रामायण, फेरि कति वर्ष पछाडि रामायण प्रसारण भइरहेको छ। विद्यार्थीहरू धेरैजनाले सायद रामायण टिभी मार्फत पनि हेरिरहेका छन् होला, अथवा रामायणको कथा धेरैजना विद्यार्थीहरूले सुनेका पनि छौ होला। रामायणमा विशेष गरेर रामको जीवन चरित्र अथवा रामको आदर्शतालाई, रामको जुन सोच छ, विचार छ, जुन कार्यप्रणाली छ, त्यसलाई दर्शाउने चेष्टा गरिएको छ। र भगवान रामको आदर्श विचार, आदर्श सोच लाई दर्शाउने चेष्टा रामायणमा गरिएको छ भनेदेखि त्यो रामायण भित्रबाटै राम र भरतको जुन संवाद छ, राम र भरतको जुन कुराकानी छ, जति बेला राजा दशरथले आफ्नी पत्नी, आफ्नी माइली पत्नी कैकेयीको कुरा सुनेर छोरा भरतलाई चाहिँ राजगद्दी दिनुपर्छ अनि रामलाई चाहिँ वनवास पठाउनुपर्छ भनेर जुन आदेश दिनुहुन्छ, त्यो आदेश पाएपछि, पिताको आदेश पाएपछि राम चाहिँ आदर्श पुरुष, राम चाहिँ बाबुको आदेश पालन गरेर बाबुले दिएको आदेशलाई आफ्नो वरदान नै सम्झेर, बाबुले दिएको वरदान सम्झेर जब वन जानको निम्ति तत्पर हुन्छन्, त्यति बेला तत्पर हुँदाखेरि म चाहिँ राजा हुन योग्यको व्यक्ति होइन, म राजा भएर बस्ने व्यक्ति होइन, यो गद्दी तपाईँको निम्ति हो, तपाईँले चाहिँ यो गद्दी सम्हालेर बस्नुपर्छ, म चाहिँ राज गर्न योग्यको छुइनँ, म त तपाईँको एउटा सेवक मात्र हो, म तपाईँको सेवा गरेर बस्ने व्यक्ति मात्र हो भनेर भरतले रामलाई बिन्ती गरेको कुरा, भरतले रामलाई आग्रह गर्छ, बिन्ती गर्छ कि दाजु तपाईँले नै राज गर्नुपर्छ, तपाईँ नै बस्नुपर्छ, राजगद्दी तपाईँले चलाउनुपर्छ, यो सिंहासन तपाईँको निम्ति हो, तपाईँ वन जानु हुँदैन, तपाईँ बस्नुपर्छ भन्दाखेरि एक आदर्श व्यक्ति राम वन जान नै तत्पर हुन्छन्, किनभने पिताले दिएको आदेश चाहिँ म टुक्राउन चाहदिनँ, पिताले जुन आदेश दिएका छन्, पिताले जुन वरदान दिएका छन्, त्यो वरदानलाई पालन गरेर म चाहिँ वनवास जानै पर्छ भनेर उनले भन्छन्। र यसरी दाजुभाइ बीचमा, राम अनि भरत बीचमा भएको कुराकानीलाई यो संवाद भनेर भनिएको छ। संवाद भनेको वार्तालाप हो, कुराकानी हो। यो कुराकानी यो कवितामा व्यक्त गर्ने चेष्टा गरिएको छ। राम भरत संवाद कविताको शीर्षक छ राम भरत संवाद, कवि भानुभक्त आचार्य। ख्वामित हजुरको म त दास पो हुँ, यो राज्य गर्नाकन योग्यको हुँ, यो गादी त यही हजुरको हो, मैले त सेवा गरिबस्नु पो हो। यहाँनिर भरतले रामलाई भनेको छ, मालिक म त दास मात्र हुँ, तपाईँको म त दास मात्र हो, यो राज्य गर्नको निम्ति योग्यको म छैन, म कोही पनि म चाहिँ यो राज्य चलाउनको निम्ति योग्यको व्यक्ति होइन। यो गद्दी त यो गादी भनेको सिंहासन, यो गद्दी तपाईँको हो र तपाईँले नै यो राज चाहिँ चलाउनुपर्छ। म चाहिँ तपाईँको सेवा गरेर बस्छु, म सेवा गरेर बस्न चाहन्छु भनेर रामलाई भरतले यसरी आग्रह गरेको छ। छोरा हुनन् यज्ञ बहुत गरिनन्, सम्पूर्ण लोकको पनि ताप हरिनन्, तब पो ती छोरासित राज्य छाडी जानु असल हो त छँदैछ जाडी। र उनले भरतले रामलाई आग्रह गरेका छन्, छोरा भएपछि यज्ञ गर्नुपर्छ, सबै लोकको यो संसारको यो लोकको दुःख ताप भनेको पीर सन्ताप दुःख हरण गरेर सम्पूर्ण कार्य पुरा गरेपछि त्यसपछि पो वन जानुपर्छ त, त्यसपछि पो वनवास जानुपर्छ त। अहिले तपाईँको वनवास जाने समय होइन, तपाईँ त यहाँ बसेर राज्य चलाउनुपर्छ, तपाईँले यो गद्दी सम्हाल्नुपर्छ, तपाईँले यो सिंहासन सम्हाल्नुपर्छ र यो सिंहासनलाई सञ्चालन गर्नुपर्छ तपाईँ बसेर, र तपाईँ बसिदिनुहोस् भनेर रामलाई भरतले आग्रह गर्छ। बेला त यो होइन जान वनमा, मेरा त यही निश्चय हुन्छ मनमा, जाउँ घर फर्की सगाई जाओस्, मेरा यी मातासित रिस नआओस्। फेरि पनि भरतले बिन्ती गर्छ रामलाई कि यो तपाईँको बेला होइन, वन जाने बेला होइन, मेरो मनमा म निश्चय गरेर म भन्न सक्छु तपाईँको वन जाने बेला होइन, मेरोबाट आग्रह छ, मेरोबाट बिन्ती छ, तपाईँ घर फर्केर आउनुहोस्, घर फर्किनुहोस् अनि तपाईँले राजगद्दी सम्हाल्नुहोस्। मेरो आमासँग पनि तपाईँले रिस नगर्नुहोस्, आमाको कुरा सुनेर जुन बुबाले बाबाले जुन निर्णय लिनुभयो वनवास बसाउने, र यो आमासँग पनि तपाईँले रिस नगरिदिनुहोस्, रिस नराखिकन तपाईँ फर्केर आउनुहोस्। तपाईँको जङ्गल जाने बेला, वन जाने बेला, झाडी जाने बेला चाहिँ यति बेला होइन, तपाईँ फर्केर आउनुहोस् भनेर भरतले रामलाई आग्रह गर्छ। यस्ता प्रकारले गरी बिन्ती गर्दै आँखाभरि आँसु बहुत धर्दै रोया भरतले जब पाउमा गई, बोल्या प्रभुले पनि खुसी मनभई। यस्तो प्रकारले धेरै बिन्ती गर्छ भरतले रामलाई, बिन्ती गर्छ, आँखाभरि आँसु पारेर बिन्ती गर्छ, रुन्छ भरत, कराउँछ, बिन्ती गर्छ, तपाईँ फर्किनुपर्छ। रामको चरणमा परिपरिकन उसले बिन्ती गर्छ, तपाईँ फर्किनुपर्छ, यसरी तपाईँ जङ्गल गएर तपाईँ वनवास गएर हुँदैन, तपाईँ फर्केर आउनुहोस् भनेर घरिघरि बिन्ती गर्छ। बिन्ती गर्दाखेरि प्रसन्न भएर प्रभु रामले भन्छन्, प्रभु राम बोल्छन् अनि उनले भन्छन्, हे भाइ गर्छौ आज किन जिद्दी, फिर्नु असल छैन न काम सिद्धि, जान्छु म वनमा तिमी फर्किजाऊ, यस राज्यको काम तिमीले चलाऊ। यसरी भरतले घरिघरि आग्रह गरेपछि रामले भन्छन् भरतलाई, हे भाइ यसरी जिद्दी नगर, यसरी जिद्दी गर्नु व्यर्थ छ। मैले जुन दायित्व मैले पाएको छु, जुन काम मैले पाएको छु, जुन जिम्मेवारी मलाई दिएको छ, त्यो जिम्मेवारी मैले पुरा गर्नै पर्छ। काम नसिद्धिकन म फर्किनु हुँदैन, म जान्छु, तिमी घर फर्केर जाऊ, म वनवास जानै पर्छ, म जङ्गल जानै पर्छ, म वनमा गएर बस्छु, तिमी फर्केर जाऊ, त्यो राज्यको काम तिमीले चलाउँदै गर, अहिले गएर तिमी राज्य सम्हाल, तिमीले गएर राज्य सम्हाल्नुपर्छ। म चाहिँ मलाई पिताले जुन आदेश दिनुभएको छ त्यो आदेशलाई मैले पालन गर्नुपर्छ भनेर रामले भन्छन्। रामले वन गई मुनिवेश धर्नु, यहीँ भरतले बसी राज्य गर्नु, भन्या पिताको जब सुन्न पाया, आज्ञा उसैले वन जान आया। र रामले चाहिँ वनमा गएर मुनिको भेष, ऋषिको भेष धरेर बस्नुपर्छ अनि यहीँ भरतले बसेर राज्य गर्नुपर्छ। रामले चाहिँ वनमा गएर मुनिको ऋषिको भेष धारण गरेर ऋषिको रूपमा वनमा गएर बस्नुपर्छ अनि भरतले चाहिँ यहीँ बसेर राज्य गर्नुपर्छ भनेर जब पिताले आदेश दिइसकेपछि, पिताले आज्ञा सुनाइसकेपछि चाहिँ म त्यो आज्ञाको पालन गर्न नै म चाहिँ वनमा आएको हो, म वन जानको निम्ति तत्पर बनेको हो, यसैले गर्दा तिमीले मलाई बिन्ती नगर भनेर रामले भरतलाई भन्छन्। यी बात भरतले जब सुन्न पाया, फेरि चरणमा गरी बिन्ती लाया, हे नाथ पिता हुन् मतिहीन भयाका, स्त्रीका त साह्रै बसमा पर्याका। अब यहाँनिर भरतले फेरि रामको कुरा सुनेपछि, दाजुको कुरा सुनिसकेपछि फेरि भरतले बिन्ती गर्छ, चरणमा गएर खुट्टा समातेर उसले बिन्ती गर्छ, चरणमा परेर बिन्ती गर्छ। यी बात भरतले जब सुन्न पायो, जब रामको मुखबाट यो वचन सुन्छ, सुनिसकेपछि उसले फेरि बिन्ती गर्छ, हे ईश्वर, हे नाथ, पिता चाहिँ मतिभ्रष्ट भएका छन्, मतिहीन भएका छन्। पिता मतिहीन भएर यो निर्णय पिताले लिएका हुन्। स्त्रीको कुरा सुनेर, आमाको कुरा सुनेर, स्त्रीको कुरा सुनेर, स्त्रीको बसमा परेर पिताले यो निर्णय लिएको हो र यो निर्णयमा तपाईँ अडिग नहुनुहोस्, तपाईँ फर्किनुपर्छ भनेर यसरी पटक पटक भरतले रामलाई आग्रह गर्छ। उनले भन्या था पनि राज्य छाडी जानु असल होइन, आज झाडी ख्वामी त बहुत बिन्ती छ, फर्की जाउँ, फर्कन्न भन्या त जवाब नपाऊँ। यसरी भरतले घरिघरि बिन्ती गर्छ। रामले म आज्ञा पालन गर्छु, पिताजीको आज्ञा पालन गर्छु, म जङ्गलै जान्छु, म वनमै गएर बस्नुपर्छ, मैले 14 वर्षको वनवासको जुन मलाई आदेश दिएको छ त्यो आदेशलाई मैले पालन गर्नै पर्छ भनेर रामले भने तापनि भरतले घरिघरि बिन्ती गरिरहन्छ। यसरी भने पनि राज्य छोडेर जानु भने पनि तपाईँले आज यसरी राज्य छोडेर जानु चाहिँ उचित होइन। हे ईश्वर, हे मालिक, तपाईँ हुनुहुन्छ, तपाईँलाई म, हे प्रभु, म बिन्ती गर्छु तपाईँलाई, तपाईँ फर्किनुहोस्, तपाईँ फर्किनुपर्छ, यसरी जान्न भन्ने, फर्किदिन भन्ने वचन चाहिँ तपाईँले नगर्नुहोस् भनेर भरतले घरिघरि पटक पटक यसरी आग्रह गर्छ, बिन्ती गर्छ। यस्तो भरतले जब जिद्दी लिया, उत्तर प्रभुले फेरि दिया, फर्कन्न भैया तिमी फर्किजाऊ, पिताजीलाई पनि दोष नलाऊ। घरिघरि यसरी भरतले बिन्ती गर्छ, गरेकै गर्छ, तपाईँ फर्किनुपर्छ, वनवास जानु हुँदैन भनेर बिन्ती गर्छ। त्यति बेला फेरि रामले भन्छन्, उत्तर प्रभुले पनि फेरि दिया, प्रभुले पनि फेरि उत्तर दिन्छन्। रामको उत्तर आउँछ, म फर्किदिनँ भैया, भाइ, म के गर्दिनँ, फर्किदिनँ, तिमी फर्केर जाऊ। अनि पिताजीलाई पनि दोष नलगाऊ, पिताजीले जे आदेश दिनुभयो, बाबाले जे आदेश दिनुभयो त्यो सही आदेश दिनुभएको छ र पिताजीलाई पनि तिमीले दोष दिने काम नगर, भुल देखाउने काम नगर भनेर भरतलाई रामले भन्छन्। खुब सत्यवादी त पिताजी थिया, साँचो हुनाले वरदान दिया, सो पूर्ण गर्नाकन जान्छु वनमा, साँचो कुरा हो बुझिल्याउ न मनमा। अब यहाँनिर फेरि रामले भरतलाई भनेका छन्, पिताजी त सत्यवादी थिए, सत्यमा हिँड्ने व्यक्ति थिए, पिताजी के थिए, सत्यवादी थिए। अनि साँचो भएको कारणले गर्दा, सत्यमा भएको कारणले गर्दा नै पिताजीले के गरेका छन्, मलाई यो वरदान दिएका छन्, वनमा जानु, 14 वर्ष वनवास गर्नु, तिमी वनमा बस्नु भनेर वरदान दिएका छन्। र त्यो आज्ञा, पिताले दिएको आज्ञा, मेरो बाबाले दिएको आज्ञा पुरा गर्नको निम्ति चाहिँ, त्यो आज्ञा पुरा गर्नको निम्ति चाहिँ म वनमा गइरहेको छु। यो चाहिँ सत्य कुरा हो, यो साँचो कुरा हो, यो चाहिँ तिमीले बुझ्नुपर्छ, यो तिमीले यो कुरा, यो सत्य कुरा, यो यथार्थ कुरा चाहिँ तिमीले बुझ्नुपर्छ भनेर रामले भरतलाई भन्छन्। उत्तर प्रभुको सुनि दुःख मान्या, फेरि चरणमा परि बिन्ती लाया, फिर्नुहोस् ख्वामी त बिन्ती गर्छु, यस दण्डकारण्य विषय म जान्छु। बरु म यो दण्डमै भोग्छु, यो दण्ड, यो सजाय बरु म भोग्न तत्पर छु, तर तपाईँ फर्किनुपर्छ, तपाईँ फर्किनुपर्छ, तपाईँ बरु म जान्छु, म गएर वनमा बस्छु, तपाईँ चाहिँ राज्य चलाउनुपर्छ, तपाईँले फर्केर आएर तपाईँ आउनै पर्छ भनेर यसरी फेरि रामलाई भरतले बिन्ती गर्छ। प्रभुको कुरा सुनिसकेपछि, जम्मै रामको वृत्तान्त, जम्मै कुराहरू सुनिसकेपछि पनि भरतले फेरि बिन्ती गर्छ, बरु त्यो दोष, त्यो दण्ड भोग्न म तयारी छु, तर तपाईँ चाहिँ फर्केर आएर राज्य चलाइदिनुपर्छ, मेरो यो बिन्ती चाहिँ तपाईँले सुनिदिनुपर्छ भनेर फेरि भरतले भन्छ। यस्ता वचन सुनि भरतजीलाई फेरि हुकुम भयो, तिमी फर्क भाइ, यो राज्य साट्या पनि हुन्छ भुटो, हे भाइ गर्छौ आज किन झुटो। यसरी हामीले झुटो काम गर्नु हुँदैन, अनर्थ काम गर्नु हुँदैन, आफूलाई जुन दायित्व दिएको छ त्यो दायित्व हामीले पुरा गर्नै पर्छ, आफूलाई जुन जिम्मेवारी दिएको छ त्यो जिम्मेवारी हामीले पुरा गर्नै पर्छ। यसरी झुटो काम गरेर, तिमीलाई दण्ड भोगाएर, तिमीलाई दण्ड दिएर म चाहिँ राजगद्दीमा गएर बस्न सक्दिनँ। मलाई जे जिम्मेवारी पिताजीले दिएका छन्, पिताजीबाट जुन हुकुम भएको छ, जुन आदेश प्राप्त भएको छ, जुन वरदान मलाई प्राप्त भएको छ, वन जानु र मुनिको भेष धरेर बस्नु भन्ने जुन आदेश छ, त्यो आदेश मैले पालन गर्नैपर्छ। तिमी फर्केर जाऊ अनि तिमीले गएर त्यो राज्यको दायित्व, त्यो जिम्मेवारी चाहिँ तिमीले सम्हाल भनेर रामले भरतलाई भन्छन्, भरतजीलाई त्यो कुरा जनाउँछन्। र यो राम भरत संवाद शीर्षक कविताको माध्यमबाट दाजु र भाइको, भरत अनि राम बीचको कुराकानीलाई व्यक्त गर्ने चेष्टा गरिएको छ। अनि यहाँबाट एक आदर्श व्यक्तित्व, एक कर्तव्यपरायण व्यक्तित्व, रामको आदर्श चरित्रलाई, आदर्श विचारलाई, आदर्श सोचलाई, कर्तव्यपरायणतालाई यो कविताले दर्शाउने चेष्टा गरेको छ। र हामी पनि आदर्श विचारको हुनुपर्छ, आदर्श सोच राखेर हामी अघि बढ्नुपर्छ। अनि आफ्नो बाबुले दिएको आदेश, आमा बाबाले दिएको आदेश चाहिँ कर्तव्यपरायण भएर पालन गर्नुपर्छ। हामीलाई दिएको जिम्मेवारी हामीले सही तरिकाले निष्ठासँग पालन गर्नुपर्छ। जसरी भगवान रामले आदर्श विचार लिएर आफूलाई वनवास पठाउने पिताको हुकुम हुँदा पनि त्यसलाई उल्लङ्घन नगरिकन, जाँदिन नभनिकन सहर्ष त्यसलाई स्वीकार गरेर वन जान तत्पर हुन्छन्। त्यसरी नै हामी पनि एक आदर्श सोच राखेर अघि बढ्नुपर्छ, कर्तव्यपरायण हुनुपर्छ। जीवनमा त्यस्ता दुःख सुखहरू, सङ्घर्षका दिनहरू पनि जीवनमा आइपर्छ, कठिनताका दिनहरू पनि आइपर्छ। तर त्यो कठिनतालाई पनि सामना गर्ने शक्ति, दुःखको दिनलाई पनि सामना गर्ने शक्ति हामीसित हुनुपर्छ भन्ने एउटा मानवीय मूल्यका कुराहरू पनि यो कविताले व्यक्त गर्ने चेष्टा गरेको छ। एउटा राम्रो सन्देश यो कविताले दिएको छ। हामी पनि राम जस्तो कर्तव्यपरायण, राम जस्तो आदर्श व्यक्ति बन्न सक्छौँ। तर त्यो आदर्श सोच र आदर्श विचारलाई हामीले लिनुपर्छ र दिएको जिम्मेवारी, दिएको कार्यलाई पुरा गर्नुपर्छ, वचनलाई पुरा गर्नुपर्छ, वचनको पक्का हुनुपर्छ भन्ने एउटा सोच राखेर राम भरत संवाद शीर्षक कवितामा भानुभक्त आचार्यले खुबै राम्रो शैलीमा, सरल तरिकाले कविताको माध्यमबाट हामीलाई दाजुभाइको बीचको भएको कुराकानी, राम र भरतको माझमा भएको वार्तालापलाई मिठो तरिकाले प्रस्तुत गर्ने चेष्टा गरेका छन्। र यहाँबाट पनि यो राम भरत संवाद शीर्षक कविताबाट पनि कविताको अवतरण दिइन्छ, कविताको पंक्ति उद्धृत गरेर दिइन्छ इक्जाममा, अनि प्रश्नहरू सोधिन्छ। र यहाँबाट मैले बुझाए अनुरूप विद्यार्थीहरूले तयार गरेर प्रश्नहरूको उत्तर तयारी गरेर लेख्नुपर्ने हुन्छ। अनि यो कविताको मूल भावलाई विद्यार्थीहरूले बुझेर आफ्नो जीवनमा पनि उतार्ने, अनि यसको साथसाथै विद्यार्थीहरूले प्रश्नपत्र विभिन्न हाम्रो इक्जामको 10औं श्रेणीको आइसिएससीको जुन नेपालीको प्रश्नपत्रहरू हुन्छ, यसमा राम भरत संवादबाट पटक पटक प्रश्नहरू दोहोरिन सक्छ, आउन सक्छ, आइरहेको हामी देख्छौँ। त्यसमा विद्यार्थीहरूले तयारी गरेर आगामी दिनमा परीक्षामा राम्रो प्रकारले यसको उत्तर लेख्ने सुझाव राख्दै यो कविता सायद विद्यार्थीहरूले राम्रो प्रकारले बुझेको म अनुभव गर्छु। र यस पछाडि यो कविता पछि हामी लेखनाथ पौडेलको जुन कविता छ कालमहिमा, यो फेरि हामी अर्को सेसनमा, अर्को क्लासमा हामी कालमहिमा लेखनाथ पौडेलको जीवनी पढ्नेछौँ अनि कालमहिमा शीर्षक कविता पढ्नेछौँ। र आजलाई हाम्रो यो क्लास आजलाई यतिमै राख्छौँ र विद्यार्थीहरूलाई घर बसेरै राम्रोसँग यो क्लासको फाइदा लिने केटिभी मार्फत, हिल च्यानल मार्फत जुन सोझो एउटा प्रसारण गर्ने जुन व्यवस्था गरिएको छ, विद्यार्थीहरूले यो क्लासको धेरैभन्दा धेरै फाइदा लिएर राम्रो प्रकारले घरमै बसेर तयारी गरिदिने आग्रह पनि हामी गर्छौँ।
Hello students, I'm here to teach you civics. So before we begin with the lesson, first of all, I'd like to talk about your syllabus. Now if you go to the content in your book, you'll get some idea about your syllabus, that your syllabus has been divided into 3 sections, that is the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. Now coming to the question pattern. Civics is a part of your history paper that consists of 30 marks. 10 marks for your short answer type questions and 20 marks for your long answer type questions. Now the long answer type question, for that you'll be given 3 questions out of which you need to choose any 2. Therefore, I would like to suggest you to focus at least on the 2 sections, either the legislative or the executive or the judiciary as per your choice. So it will be beneficial for you to score marks. Especially this is only for your long answer type questions. Obviously for your short answer type questions, you need to be thorough with all the chapters. Okay, now let's start with the class today. So here, today we are going to learn about the first organ, the Union Legislature. The first organ of the government, that is the Union Legislature. Now let's start with the definition of Parliament. What is Parliament? Parliament is a legislative organ which makes the laws in order to govern a country. So therefore, since the Parliament makes the laws, you can also define Parliament as a law-making body. Now the Parliament consists of 2 houses, that is the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. So let us do a comparative study of these 2 houses. First, let's start with the Lok Sabha. Coming to the term of the Lok Sabha. Now, the Lok Sabha members, they are elected for a term of 5 years, after which the house gets dissolved. Next, we have the election. The Lok Sabha members are directly, remember, they are directly elected by the people through universal adult franchise. Now, what is this universal adult franchise? It means that people who are 18 years and above, they have the right to vote and elect their leader. So that was the election for the Lok Sabha members. Next, we have the composition. The Lok Sabha comprises of 552 members. So the maximum strength of the Lok Sabha is 552, now which has been elected, the members are elected and nominated. As you can see on the board, 530 members from the states are elected and 20 members are elected from the union territory. The nominated members are 2 in number, who are elected by the president from the Anglo-Indian community. So that is the composition of your Lok Sabha. Now coming to the qualifications of the Lok Sabha. In order to become a member of the Lok Sabha, the person should possess the following qualifications. Firstly, he should be a citizen of India. Next, he should not be of unsound mind. Third, he must have his name in the electoral roll. Fourth, he should not hold any profit under the government. And fifthly, he should not be a proclaimed offender, which means he should not have any criminal background. Plus, other than that, the Lok Sabha members requires to be not less than 25 years of age. So that was the conditions or the qualifications in order to become a member of the Lok Sabha. Moving on to the last one, that is the presiding officer. So the presiding officer of the Lok Sabha is the speaker. So this was the point for your Lok Sabha. Now let us move to the other house, the Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha, also the upper house of the upper house. Now coming to the terms of the Rajya Sabha is a permanent body. Now unlike the Lok Sabha, which gets dissolved after every 5 years, the Rajya Sabha is a permanent body, which means that the house does not get dissolved. Now please note it here that though the house does not get dissolved, but the members of the Rajya Sabha, they are elected for a term of 6 years, which means that after every 2 years, 1/3 of the members retire. Next, the election now. Coming to the election, the Rajya Sabha members are indirectly elected. if we go back to the Lok Sabha, we learned that the Lok Sabha members are directly elected by the people, but the Rajya Sabha members are indirectly elected by the state legislative assemblies through the single transferable vote system. Now, what is the single transferable vote system? According to this system, the voters may mark as many preference votes. Then the first preference votes are counted, and if the candidate gets the absolute majority, then he is declared selected. But if in case he does not get the absolute majority, then the candidate securing the least number of votes are eliminated, and the process continues in this way till the candidate gets the majority. Moving on to the composition of the Rajya Sabha. Now, the Rajya Sabha members comprises of 250. The maximum strength of the Rajya Sabha is 250. Again, here too, they are elected and nominated. 238 members are elected by the states, and 12 members are nominated by the president from among people with special knowledge in the field of literature, art, science, and social service. Now, coming to the qualification of the Rajya Sabha, it is very similar. The conditions, in order to qualify for the member of the Rajya Sabha, the conditions are very similar to that of the Lok Sabha, except for the difference in the age. Whereas when we learned the Lok Sabha qualification, there we learned that in order to become a member of the Lok Sabha, you have to be not less than 25 years. Whereas in the Rajya Sabha, in order to qualify to become a member of the Rajya Sabha, you should not be less than 30 years of age. Please note the difference. Lok Sabha is not less than 25 years, and Rajya Sabha is not less than 30 years of age. Now, the Vice President acts as the presiding officer of the Rajya Sabha. So this was a comparative study about the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. I hope I am clear. Now let us move on to the next topic, that is the parliamentary procedures. Now, the parliamentary procedures are the formalities, okay? The parliamentary procedures are the formalities which are observed, which are followed by the legislators in the parliament. And these parliamentary procedures, it has been categorized into different headings. Like the first one, we have sessions. Next, we have quorum. Then third, we have the question hour. Fourth, adjournment motion. And lastly, the no confidence motion. Now let us start with the first one, that is the sessions. Sessions, which are also known as the meetings. So the president summons or calls for the sessions or the meetings of the houses. Here, 3 sessions are held in a year, which has been divided into 3 number. The first one, the budget session, that takes place in the month of February to May. Monsoon session from July to September. The winter session from November to December. So this is the session, that is the parliamentary procedure followed by the legislators. The next one is the quorum now. Now what is quorum? Quorum is the minimum number, remember, minimum number of members present in order to transact a business. If in case the quorum is not fulfilled, then it gets adjourned or the meeting gets postponed. Next, we have the question hour. Now, every member in the house, they have the privilege to ask questions. Every member, they have the right to ask questions from the government regarding matters of public interest. So therefore, the first hour of every working day has been reserved for asking and answering of questions. So that first hour, which is reserved for asking and answering of questions, is known as the question hour. The fourth one is the adjournment motion. Now let's learn about adjournment motion. It is said in the parliamentary setup that daily business, the daily proceedings, the daily business, they are programmed well. They are planned well in advance. But sometimes it so happens that urgent matters crops up. So during that time when urgent public importance arises, then the normal business or the daily business, they are kept aside, they are set aside, and they discuss, the members, the House, discuss matters relating to that public importance. Which means here, look at the word adjourn. Adjourn, which means to postpone. So here in the adjournment motion, we learned that whenever there is any urgent matters to be discussed, then at that time, the House postpones the normal business and starts discussing with the important urgent matters. So that is the adjournment motion. And the last of the parliamentary procedure is the no confidence motion now. Now in this no confidence motion, the Council of Ministers, they remain in office, or let's say they enjoy their power as long as they get the majority support or the confidence of the majority. Once they lose the confidence, then they are deemed to resign. Since the Council of Ministers are collectively responsible, since the ministers are collectively responsible, if the majority votes in favor of the no confidence motion, remember here, if the majority votes in favor of the no confidence motion, then the Council of Ministers, that is the whole ministry, they have to resign. And usually this no confidence motion is passed by the opposition party. So here we discussed about the various parliamentary procedures. Now moving on to the last one is the Speaker. We are going to now discuss about the Speaker. As already talked about, it had already been dealt while doing the Lok Sabha that the Speaker is the presiding officer of the Lok Sabha. Now, how is the Speaker elected? So, the election procedure of the Speaker is this way. They are elected. The Speaker is elected from among its members, from among its own members by the Lok Sabha for a duration of 5 years. But please note it down that this is one of the special feature of the Speaker, that even after the House gets dissolved, after the term of 5 years, the Speaker does not vacate his office. He continues to remain in the office until and unless a new Speaker is elected. So that was the term of the Speaker. And moving to the next one, that is the powers or the roles and the functions of the Speaker. Now the powers of the Speaker again has been subdivided into various categories, as you can see on the board: regulating business of the House, the administrative function, the disciplinary function, and the parliamentary function. Now what I would like to suggest to you is that at least learn 6 to 8 points for the powers and functions of the Speaker. Which means that for every subheading, you can at least learn 2 points as the powers of the Speaker. Now let's deal with the first one, that is regulation of the business of the House. Under this category, under this power, the Speaker, they have the right to preside over the meetings of the Lok Sabha. Since we had learnt that the Speaker is the presiding officer of the Lok Sabha, therefore, Speaker presides over the meetings of the Lok Sabha. The second power under regulation of the business of the House is the Speaker adjourns the meeting. It is the Speaker who postpones the meeting if the quorum is not fulfilled. For lack of quorum, the Speaker has the power to postpone or adjourn the meeting. The third one, it is the Speaker who decides if the bill introduced in the Parliament is a money bill or not. And fourthly, in case of a tie, in case of a deadlock, it is the Speaker who gives his casting vote and resolves the deadlock. So that was the power of the Speaker under the subheading regulating business of the House. Coming to the next one, that is the administrative function. Now, under the administrative function, the Speaker controls the visitor of the House. And secondly, he keeps the record of the proceedings of the House. Moving on to the next one is the disciplinary function. Here in the disciplinary function, the Speaker maintains order and discipline in the House, and the Speaker has the right to suspend any member if the member misconducts or misbehaves in the proceedings of the House. And the last power of the Speaker is the parliamentary function. Now, under the parliamentary function, the Speaker acts as the ex officio chairman, and it is the Speaker who fixes the agendas, the plans of the meeting. Okay, so today in this class, we learned about the parliament, the definition of the parliament. Then we learned about the comparative study of the two houses, the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha. We also learned about the parliamentary procedures, the various parliamentary procedures like quorum, adjournment motion, question hour, no confidence motion. And then we learned about the Speaker, the election of the Speaker, and the powers and role of the Speaker. So I hope, children, you have understood today's lesson. And I would like you to please go through your book and revise it once again. And in the next class, we'll be dealing with the powers and functions of the Parliament and the relation between the two houses. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Once again, I'm back to discuss with the chapter on climate. And yesterday we had discussed about a few things regarding what climate is all about, the difference between weather and climate, and the factors that affect the climate of a country. Okay, so all the factors I've already discussed with all the details, whatever you're supposed to know regarding the various factors affecting the climate of the country. Okay, now depending on these factors, and there are other factors also, let me talk about it. Okay, first of all, India's tapering topography. That topography means the structure. Okay, India's structure altogether, its tapering topography with the three water bodies, the Arabian Sea, the Bay of Bengal, and the Indian Ocean. Okay, plays a very significant role in determining the monsoons and the distribution of the monsoons over the entire country. So because of this structure, because of this particular structure, the seasons in India is marked into 4 distinct ones. Okay, the first one that we have is the hot season. The hot season that begins from, or that starts from March and it continues till May, so 3 months. Normally for 3 months, March to May. Then we have the rainy season, that is from June to September. Then we have the retreating monsoon, the reversal of the monsoons. And then finally we have the cold season, that is from December to February. Okay, so these actually four of seasons, okay, play a very important role because India is basically an agrarian country. So the economy of the entire country depends upon the agricultural output. Now, agriculture over here not only means food crops or cash crops, or food crops like rice, wheat, or staple diet, whatever we take every day, okay? And cash crops, which are commercial crops that we know of, okay, like tea, coffee, then we have cotton, jute, okay? But apart from that, there are other industries, directly or indirectly, they're involved in agriculture. There are many industries, like we have the agro-based industries, okay? Then we have, in the agro-based industries, we have the cotton, okay? We have the jute, okay? Your oil industry. All these industries depend upon the agricultural sector for their raw materials. Okay, so the raw materials, they depend upon the agricultural sector. Now, basically, this kind of a variation which we see in the monsoons, okay, there is a marked difference in the places which lies in the interior and the places that lies in the coastal or the coastal location, the coastal areas, that is That is to be kept in mind, okay? Now, let me go on with the seasons with the characteristic features. This is very important. See, children normally in the ICC examination, either they ask for 1, at the maximum 2, because as I already explained, I've already told you that there are the questions are of objective type, okay? So first let me go on with the hot season, that is from March to May. So what is the condition that takes place? What is the condition of the overall country during that particular season? This season, the hot season, you see a very distinct and you find a clear demarcation or distinction between the places in the interior experiencing continental climate and the places along the coastal areas. Now, in the hot season, the first one, as you see here, okay, is the sun shines directly overhead the Tropic of Cancer. I've mentioned the degrees here, okay, that is 23.5 degree north, okay. So the sun shines directly overhead the Tropic of Cancer. The next one is the range of temperature. Now here when we talk about the range means the difference, high and low. So the range of temperature is very high in the interior location. When we'll be doing the climatic table later on, you'll be able to understand very, very distinctly, very clearly as to what we mean by the range of temperature. Range of temperature over here means the difference in the temperature, okay, between the summer and the winter. This type of a variation you can see only in the interior location, places which are landlocked, okay? Then the season is marked by dry weather and excessive heat. This is a very important point because of this particular third factor, that is because of this factor, that is the season which is marked by dry weather, this type of a condition gives rise to local winds and depressions because of the excessive heat, the pressure over the land is very low. It becomes low. So it actually draws a lot of winds from the surrounding areas which can cause some kind of weather disturbances, okay? So over here I've given you 3, okay, for the hot season. Now, the most important factor, like yesterday also, the last class I discussed about the monsoons, the importance of the monsoons. And basically why in India is because India is actually an agrarian country, or the economy, agricultural economy depends a lot because 60% of the total population of the country, either directly or indirectly, they're involved in agriculture. So that's why they say that agriculture is the mainstay. Okay, what is the word? Mainstay, M-A-I-N-S-T-A-Y, right? So agriculture is called the mainstay or the backbone of Indian economy from this point of view. So the rainy season plays a very important role, all right? So here, the first one, okay, the first feature is there is uneven distribution. The word, mark my word, there's a word over here, mark it as a keyword, uneven distribution of rainfall, and I mentioned also why, due to the relief features. There's a variation in the relief feature. There are high mountains, there are plateaus, there are plains, there are hills, there are valleys, okay? So because of the uneven or because of the rugged topography, the distribution of rainfall is uneven. It's not the same. All the places do not get the same amount of rainfall, okay? We'll come to that later on when we do the other portion that follows, okay? Now, Indian monsoon, this is a continuation over here. Indian monsoon is largely controlled by orography. If you're not aware of this particular word called orography means relief features, especially I've mentioned over here the mountains, the high mountains or the hills, okay? It could be mountains, hills, plateaus. So it is largely controlled by the orography. So India experiences mostly orographic type of rainfall, especially the onset of the monsoon. You can see a marked demarcation. You can see a marked difference in the places where the rainfall gets deposited. And due to what factor? It is because of the orographic features, okay? Then erratic nature of the southwest monsoon. The word again, the key word over here. Keywords, you please make sure in your textbooks also, after the lesson is over, please make sure whatever I have mentioned over here to mark down it's in your text, okay? Erratic nature of the southwest monsoon. Because see, we are all aware of the fact, okay? Floods, droughts, these are very, very common in our country. And every year we hear of incidents where, sad incidents, not only talking about the incidents, but sad incidents where the farmers get affected on a very large scale, especially because of the floods, or on the other hand, that is because of the drought condition, okay? So erratic nature, the word over here, okay, I'll give you an example. That is, at the same time, what we mean by it, erratic means it is very, very unpredictable, okay, unpredictable. So there are some places where let's say the places may be experiencing severe floods. At the same time, there are places, again, where they may be experiencing drought condition also. So that is what it means by the erratic nature. Now there are other features also, other characteristics also, but here I've just mentioned 3 each so that you'll be able to follow, okay, one after the other. That is with the rainy season. Now, as I've already told you again, okay, going back to it again, that is rainy season or the monsoons, onset of the southwest monsoon, as well as the retreating monsoon, that is the northeast monsoon. Both are very, very important for Indian economy because it directly affects the agricultural sector, right? Okay. Now, the retreating monsoon, that is for a very short period of time, that is from October to November, all right? Now, retreat means, from the word, retreat means to go back. Now, monsoon follows a very, very important factor that you have to remember is that monsoon follows a definite pattern. The way it approaches, it retreats or it goes back in the same direction, in the same manner, okay? Now, retreating monsoon, the characteristic features are, this is a transition period. Again, I've written the word over here, change. There's a changing phase. There's a transition from the hot, dry weather and the cold weather season as we are heading towards the winter. From the summer and before the winter, there's a transition period. There's a changing phase, okay, which is known as the season of the retreating monsoon, right? Now, during this particular time, often we hear of, like if you're aware of the fact, especially during this time, October, November, we hear of tropical depressions and cyclones over the Bay of Bengal and, the entire coastal region, they get affected, a lot of floods, okay? So this is the time tropical depressions occur over the Bay of Bengal, traveling in west as well as to northwest, because of the depressions, okay, what happens? There is heavy loss of life and property. Okay, so that is why every year, whenever we are aware of the fact, we come to know about the weather forecast. Okay, so people are aware of the fact. Like very recently, we've heard about the cyclone called Cyclone Pailan. Okay, or there are names of the cyclones that are given, which actually affects the coastal areas. So these people are already warned beforehand only. So they are saved because they are moved on or they are shifted to safer places. Normally is done by the government. Okay, that's the initiative taken by the government that they help these people out, especially the coastal areas. And of course, they get a warning that fishermen are advised not to go out to the sea. Okay, so all these factors are because of so that there's no loss of life and property because of the depressions that occur in the Bay of Bengal. Okay, now, another fact, as I already told you, okay, that is the agricultural point of view. This retreating monsoon is very helpful for places, two places, let me tell you, that is Northwest India, okay, and Tamil Nadu, because in Tamil Nadu, rice cultivation takes place because they don't get much of the rainfall from the southwest monsoon. So we'll be doing with the diagram. I'll explain to you all in that particular diagram. So if you know the diagram, and if you can mark those few key features over there, you'll be able to answer any of the questions related with the chapter on climate. Okay, so parts of Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh receive rainfall from the retreating monsoon. So if you look at the structure, Indian peninsula structure, you'll find that the monsoons in India, okay, whether it is the summer monsoon or the winter monsoon, okay, it plays a very important role in the economy for the places that it affects. Okay, so Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh receive rainfall from the retreating monsoon. So the eastern coast gets more rain during the winter, during the season of the retreating monsoon, than they get during the summer season. Okay, so that will be explained with the help of the diagram. Now, we move on to the last one, that is out of the 4 seasons, that is the cold season, that is from December to February. All right. Now, this season is marked by the occurrence of western disturbances. Western disturbances, okay, I'll explain this western disturbances to you. Western disturbances are actually also called westerly depressions. Okay, and these depressions actually, they originate around the Mediterranean Sea, okay, crosses over towards the east, disturbing the weather, okay, in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and then it enters into India from the west. So when it enters from the west, its location, okay, western part of India is the region or the part that actually gets the light shower of rainfall. And as you know, in the western part of the country, most of the crops are grown during the winter season. Like, for example, wheat. Wheat is grown, that grows throughout the winter because of the moderate climate, and they have the harvesting just before the onset of the summer. So these crops, Rabi crops, okay, Rabi crops, or they're also called the winter crops, that benefits from the western disturbances, okay? Then there is a distinct variation in the winter temperature north and south of the Tropic of Cancer. This is a very important point. Please, you can put an arrow or put a star or whatever in your text also, or okay, in your text, so that you can make a note of it, okay? So there's a distinct variation. So the Tropic of Cancer, as I've already told you in the last class also, that is, the Tropic of Cancer divides the country into 2 temperature zones. Northern part of it is the temperate, north temperate, and southern part of it is the south temperate. Now, during this particular season, especially the continental areas, the interior landlocked areas, okay, these are the places that experience extreme type of weather condition. So one of the facts is that the winters are very cold. In the same place, during the summer, as you see, okay, the temperatures can go up to, like in Delhi, for example, can go up to above 40, 45 degree. Now, during the winter season, because of its continentality, because of its interior location, the temperature can go very low, as to just single degrees also. So you see a vast, very, very huge variation, a large variation in the weather or the temperature of these places, all right? Then the last one, the last point that we have is the light rainfall affects the Indian economy. As I've already told you again, the Rabi crops depend on winter rainfall, that is rice in Tamil Nadu, that depends on the winter rainfall, that is, and other one is wheat in northern India or the northwest part of the country. So this actually explains, so the characteristic features, if you see, okay, you can just mark these, okay, the hot season, the rainy season, I've given with the months, then the retreating monsoon, and then finally we have the cold season, which actually, these are the factors that you have to remember, okay. These are the characteristic features, because in the examination they'll normally ask you, about write any two characteristic feature, or what is the characteristic feature of the hot season. It may be depending on the marks. If it's 1 mark, just one characteristic, or if it is more, then you have to give according to the marks that is mentioned, okay. Now here I'm going to explain to you about the hot, dry season. Now before we move on with that, what is the overall condition of the places, okay, during this particular season? Before I start with that, you need to understand these 2 words, solstice and equinox, okay. Now, solstice over here means the sun standing still, okay. It has its limitation, it has its limit, okay, where the direct rays of the sun falls, that is only till the Tropic of Cancer, okay. So every 3 months there is an apparent migration of the sun, okay. Now, if you look at this equatorial region, they almost get the direct rays of the sun throughout the year. That is why they are known as the equatorial region, that is the torrid zone. Depending upon this, as we know, there are three heat zones, the torrid, temperate, and the frigid zone. Now, over here, this is equinox. Equinox means equal day and equal night. Places lying along the equator. They are under the influence of the direct rays of the sun almost throughout the year, right? Now, another word, let me explain, which is the apparent. The word is apparent here. What do we mean by the word? What we mean by when we say there's an apparent migration of the sun, apparent movement of the sun, okay? Now, this apparent movement means which appears to move. Like, see, we are standing in the same place. Suppose you're at home, okay? You see the sun rising in the east. Then, during the midday, you see sun overhead. And in the evening, you see it setting in the other part of, on the other side, that is the western sky. So, it looks as if the sun is moving. But actually, it is not. It's just an illusion, like an eye wash, okay? So, it's actually the Earth. Actually, we are in a state of mobility. But we do not experience, we don't feel that movement because of the fact that of the size of the Earth. And everything is in motion, so we don't feel it, okay? So the word apparent over here means which appears to appearing. Apparent mean appearing. Okay? Now, on the 21st of March, the sun shines directly over the equator, okay? Now, what happens is the Earth rotates, all of us we are aware of this, rotates and revolves at the same time in its elliptical orbit around the sun. So what happens is, as the Earth rotates and revolves, because of the tilt of the Earth, you know the Earth is tilted at a certain angle, okay? So the sun's rays directly after about 3 months, that is on the 21st of June, we find that the sun's rays directly falls along the Tropic of Cancer, okay? Now, again, gradually there's a southward migration of the sun, the apparent migration. Again, the word is apparent, not only the migration. The word has to be apparent migration, okay? It moves here, and 23rd of September, again, is the autumnal equinox, all right? And again, after 3 months down, 22nd of December, the sun's rays fall directly along the Tropic of Capricorn. So, if you look at it, there's 3 months of transitional movement of the sun from the equator towards the Tropic of Cancer, back to the equator, right down to the Tropic of Capricorn, again back to the... Now, if you look at the months, March, April, May, June, 3 months. July, August, September. October, November, December, again January, February, March. So, it is only within the tropics that the sun's rays fall directly. Beyond that, it never falls. It's always in an oblique manner, or we can call it in a slanting way. So, this movement of the sun actually determines a lot. So, you have to understand the apparent migration which appears to move. Okay? So, here on the 21st of March, we have the spring equinox. Okay? Then 21st of June is the summer solstice. This is the word here, solstice. That is summer. So, the summer solstice that takes place, which means to say the sun's rays fall directly on the Tropic of Cancer, and this is the longest day in the northern hemisphere, 21st of June. Again, the migration of the sun, the apparent migration of the sun takes place, and on the 23rd of September, it falls directly on the equator. So we have the autumnal equinox here. And further down towards the Tropic of Capricorn, we have on the 22nd of December, the winter solstice. Okay? So, Australia is the only country that celebrates Christmas during the peak summer season. The day is the same. The date is the same. Okay? But there is a there is always, as we are aware of, that is, the seasons are alternate. When it's summer in the northern hemisphere, it's winter in the southern. When it's winter in the southern, it is summer in the north. And when it's winter in the north, it's summer again down in the south, in the southern hemisphere, right? Now, let me just tell you about the temperature condition of the places, okay, during the hot summer season. Now, you see a marked variation in the places which are in the interior and the places in the coastal area. I've already explained that to you, okay? So, during this particular time, because of the high temperature, okay, because of the high temperature, what happens is, okay, remember this. As I'm writing, if you can, it's better for you to note it down. Now, it'll be better if you note it down, jot it down in your books or in your copies or wherever, because it's a very important fact, because the mechanism of the monsoons, or when we talk about the temperature and the pressure condition, which is very important, okay, because temperature and pressure leads to the temperature here, pressure means the atmospheric pressure, leads to the movement of the winds. Now, as we talk about the mechanism of monsoons means the wind system, okay. So, it's better to note it down, okay. Remember, if you remember this, it's always better. High temperature leads to low pressure, okay. Now, the main fact as to why low pressure is because the land gets heated up. Warm air being lighter, it's always warm, lighter, okay. And as you know, warm air, it expands, okay. Because of the expansion, the warm air rises up. So when all the warm air rises up vertically upwards, there is either no pressure, NO, no pressure, or there is low pressure created over the surface of the earth. That is why the equatorial regions are known as the equatorial low pressure belt. Though the equatorial regions are areas of very high temperature. So I hope you understand this. Because of the very high temperature, the pressure system is low. I have explained why there's low pressure, because the land gets heated up, it gets the direct rays, extreme heat, the air expands, rises up, leading to low pressure. Now, likewise, low temperature leads to high pressure, like in the North Pole and South Pole, okay? I normally refer to as the North Pole and South Pole, okay? These areas, if you look at these areas, they are regions of high pressure. In class 9, you must have done about the pressure belts. When we talk about when we study in this chapter, okay, we have the pressure belts. There are alternate belts of high and low pressure, alternate belts, okay. So the North Pole and South Pole are regions of high pressure of belt, because one of the facts is that cold air is always dense and moist, so it tends to sink, it tends to settle near the surface of the earth. It tends to settle near the surface of the earth. So when it settles near the surface, one after the other, as you see, okay, we cannot see the wind movement, or we cannot see wind, or we cannot see air. The only thing is that we can feel the air. So the pressure is felt maximum at the poles. So that is why, because of low temperature and because of the cold condensed air that settles down, it exerts a lot of pressure on the ground. So that leads to high pressure, okay? And I've underlined over here the word always. Winds never blow from low to high pressure. It's always from high pressure to low pressure. Winds always blow from high pressure to low pressure. So, as such, okay, I've already explained this fact. Now, the temperature condition over the land becomes very, very extreme, especially the areas which are in the interior, okay? So, because of the high temperature, the low pressure, especially between the Thar Desert in western India and the Chota Nagpur Plateau, in between a low pressure trough or a depression starts to form, and it becomes very intense and it becomes very, very strong. It becomes strong. So this attracts the monsoons from the surrounding seas and oceans, okay, to approach the Indian subcontinent. Now see, this is a phenomenon that takes place in all the places around the world, but here we are only concentrated with the Indian subcontinent, okay. Now, another fact is, if you look at the world, if you look at the world map, and if you observe it, you'll find that there are more of land masses in the north and more of the water bodies in the south. All of us, we are aware of the fact that 71% is water bodies and 29% is land. Or let's say we take it in whole figures, 70 and 30. Okay. So this uneven arrangement of land and water body is known as the antipodal. The antipodal arrangement of land and water bodies, okay. So this arrangement of land and water bodies, okay, that is in the northern hemisphere, that is from the equator, great circle to the north, we have more of the land masses, and in the south we have more of the water bodies, okay. So these winds that approach the Indian subcontinent, okay, actually is the movement of the trade winds, okay. Between the pressure belts, we have permanent wind system also over the planet, over the surface of the earth, that moves in a particular direction and is throughout the year. That is why they are called the planetary winds, or they are also called the prevailing winds, okay. Now these wind system, as they approach the Indian subcontinent, okay, they are drawn, they are attracted. Now one more thing before I forget, that is, when there's low pressure over the land, there's high pressure over the surrounding seas and water bodies, because it directly is related with the temperature, okay. So temperature condition cannot be same over the land and over the water bodies. So that is the main reason why when there's low pressure over the land, automatically, it's a natural phenomena, remember this, okay, that is the surrounding seas and oceans have got high pressure. So the winds blow from high pressure. That's why I told you to mark that down and keep a note of it. The important fact is that, remember, high temperature, whenever there's high temperature over the land, leads to low pressure, okay. So when there's low pressure over the land, that is during the summer, March, April, May, the temperature continues to rise day after day, and in the deserts or in the very interior land masses, the temperature, if you look at the temperature variations, okay, it can go up to an approximately in the desert region around 50 degrees Celsius also, okay. So the temperatures are very high, so the low pressure intensifies over the Indian subcontinent, especially over the northern plains. It becomes so intense that it is able to attract the monsoon winds from the sea over to the land, right? So one of the factors, that is the wind system, okay. The winds, as they cross the equator, they get deflected to the right-hand side. And they move in a direction and they approaches the Indian subcontinent in a particular manner, that is from the southwest direction. That is why they are known as the southwest monsoon system. So that when we do with the diagram, you'll be able to understand it much more in a better way, okay. So you'll be able to understand that. Now, I've already told you about the temperature and the pressure condition. Now, during this particular time, that is during the summer season, there are several local winds that occur. There are several local winds, and in different places. Why they are called local winds is because it affects only a certain locality, only a certain place, and they are given certain terms, and its characteristic is also different from one and the other. Now, the first local wind that affects first one is the Lu. These are hot, dusty, dry winds that blow over the northern plains. Nowhere else in India do you experience the onset or the occurrence of the Lu. Okay, that is in the northern plains, where the hot winds blow, and it can be very, very fatal also, because it's very hot and it can cause a lot of problem for the people. Okay, so that is the Lu that blows over the northern plains. That is why, if you have noticed, okay, the summer and the winter timing for the schools, in certain schools, especially in the plains, it changes. They start off little early, and by 1:32 the school gets over, so that they can be indoors away from the heat. Okay, so this is one of the major factor. Okay, the Lu. Then the next one is called Kal Baisakhi. Okay, actually Kal Baisakhi is a thunderstorm which brings rainfall and very beneficial for rice cultivation in West Bengal and for tea in Assam. Okay, Kal Baisakhi, actually it is also known as the death, the calamity of this particular month. Okay, Kal means death, Baisakhi is the name of the month. So that's why it's a local term, Kal Baisakhi. Okay, and apart from that, another one is the mango showers, which is another local wind that helps in the ripening of the mangoes. The slight shower of rainfall is very, very beneficial for the mango. So that is why it is known, that is why the term given as mango shower. So this light rainfall is also very helpful for this particular fruit. That is why it's called the mango showers. Okay, so this is to do with your hot summer season, the hot season that is from March to May.